At 6:43 the next morning, 3 black SUVs rolled onto Hannah White's cracked Kansas City street and stopped directly outside her duplex. Her 9-year-old son, Ethan, froze behind the curtain. "Mom? Are we in trouble?" Hannah didn't answer. 12 hours earlier, she had only $17 left until payday. She had spent every cent helping an elderly veteran stranded beside a broken pickup in the freezing dark. Now her wallet was empty. But inside her coat pocket was the strange bronze challenge coin he had secretly left behind, a bridge stamped beneath 4 words, "Leave no one behind." The middle SUV opened. The veteran stepped out. Only now he wasn't alone. He looked straight at Hannah and said, "Mrs. White, I came because I need your help. Before we continue, tell us what country you're watching from and your local time. And if stories about ordinary people and unexpected kindness mean something to you, consider subscribing and staying with us." 14 hours before the black SUVs appeared outside Hannah White's duplex, $17 lay on her kitchen table. Hannah stared at the money, as if looking at it long enough might somehow make it multiply. 1 $10 bill, 1 $5, 2 ones. That was everything. The digital clock above the stove read 4:18 p.m. Outside the kitchen window, late November clouds hung low over Kansas City, turning the afternoon the color of wet concrete. The old furnace clicked behind the wall, struggled for several seconds, then finally pushed warm air through the vent. Hannah picked up the 10. "Gas," she whispered. She moved it to the left, then the 5. "Breakfast," to the right. The 2 $1 bills remained between them. Emergency. She almost laughed at that word. $2 wasn't an emergency fund. $2 was a vending machine dinner. It was half a gallon of gas. It was the difference between being broke and being completely broke. But Hannah had learned that dignity sometimes survived on technicalities. "Mom." She quickly gathered the bills. Ethan White stood in the kitchen doorway, wearing one sock and holding the other. At 9 years old, Ethan had already developed the uncomfortable ability to read his mother's face. He knew the difference between her tired face, her worried face, and the particular expression she wore while pretending not to be worried. "You counting money again?" "Nope. You were. I was organizing money. That's counting." Hannah gave him a look. Ethan grinned and sat down to put on his second sock. Their duplex wasn't much, but Hannah kept it clean. The kitchen table had come from a thrift store. One chair didn't match the others. A thin crack ran across the linoleum near the refrigerator, and the cabinet beneath the sink had to be lifted slightly before it would close. But the refrigerator held Ethan's spelling tests under mismatched magnets. A photograph of his father stood on the shelf beside the living room window. And every Sunday, Hannah wiped the baseboards even when nobody was coming over. Poverty, she believed, was a circumstance. It did not get to become an identity. Ethan looked toward the bills she had slipped into her wallet. "Are we okay?" The question landed softly. He had been asking it more often lately. Hannah crouched beside him and straightened the collar of his sweatshirt. "We'll build a bridge." Ethan smiled. It was an old sentence in the White family. Hannah's father used to say it whenever something went wrong. A broken-down car, an overdue electric bill, a job that disappeared without warning. If there's no road, Hannah, build a bridge. As a child, she had imagined wooden planks stretching magically across rivers. As an adult, she understood what her father had meant. A bridge could be an extra shift, a repaired appliance instead of a new one, 3 dinners made from the same roasted chicken, a payment arrangement, a neighbor watching Ethan for 40 minutes. Sometimes a bridge was nothing more than surviving until Friday. And Friday was payday, 2 days away. Hannah stood and opened the refrigerator. Half a carton of milk, 6 eggs, margarine, a little cheese, leftover rice, 1 apple, a nearly empty bottle of pancake syrup. Enough. She could make enough out of almost anything. On top of the refrigerator sat an envelope from the auto shop. $186.40. The repair had swallowed what little cushion she had saved. Without it, though, her 2007 Chevrolet Malibu wouldn't have gotten her to St. Catherine Medical Center, where Hannah worked evening shifts in the hospital laundry department. The Malibu had 183,611 miles on it. Hannah knew because she checked. She also knew the passenger side wheel bearing would probably need replacing. Within 6 months, the serpentine belt was older than she liked, and the engine made a faint tapping sound for the first 3 seconds on cold mornings. She knew machines. That was the frustrating part. Years earlier, Hannah had been halfway through an industrial equipment maintenance certification at a community college. She loved troubleshooting. Machines made sense to her in ways life often didn't. A machine could shake, scream, overheat, or stop completely. But somewhere inside it was a reason. Find the reason, and you had a chance to fix the problem. Then her husband died, and suddenly Hannah's life had become a machine with half its parts missing. There had been funeral expenses, childcare, rent, and grief that didn't care whether the electric company needed payment by the 15th. The certification program went first. "I'll go back next semester," she had told herself. That had been 5 years ago. Her old textbooks still lived in a cardboard box beneath her bed. Sometimes after Ethan was asleep, Hannah opened them. Not because she expected anything to change, just because she missed the woman who had believed they belonged to her future. At 4:47, Hannah checked the time. "I have to go." Ethan grabbed his backpack. Mrs. Parker from the adjoining unit watched him during Hannah's overlap between school and work. Hannah paid her whenever she could, and returned the favor by fixing small things around her apartment. Before leaving, Ethan stopped beside the front door. "Friday, Friday, what can we get cinnamon cereal?" Hannah smiled. "Friday." He held up his pinky. She hooked hers around it. "Promise." Outside, the cold caught Hannah immediately. Her Malibu started on the second turn. She waited for the engine to settle, then looked at the dashboard. The fuel light was on. "Yeah, I see you," she muttered. She planned to stop for $10 of gas on the way home. That would be enough. Enough was the arithmetic Hannah lived by. Enough gas, enough food, enough sleep, enough hope to reach the next day. She pulled away at 4:56. Her shift began at 6. Traffic thickened near downtown, and Hannah kept the heater low to conserve fuel. At a red light, she rubbed warmth into her fingers and mentally reviewed the week. Friday paycheck. Friday afternoon groceries. Saturday laundry at home. Sunday maybe pancakes before church. Normal things. Small things. Things she protected fiercely. 20 minutes later, she turned onto an industrial stretch she sometimes used to avoid traffic. Warehouses lined one side. A chain-link fence ran along the other. Streetlights had begun flickering on beneath the darkening sky. That was when she saw the pickup. An old Ford sat crooked on the shoulder, with its hazard lights blinking weakly. Beside it stood a man. He looked to be in his early 60s, tall but slightly stooped against the cold. He wore worn jeans, heavy boots, and a faded military field jacket. His hood was raised. One hand rested on the edge of the engine compartment. The other was tucked beneath his opposite arm for warmth. Hannah slowed. The man looked toward her. For 1 second, their eyes met. Then the car behind Hannah honked. She drove on. "You can't stop for everybody," she told herself. The hospital was still 12 minutes away. Patricia Morgan had already warned the department about tardiness after staffing problems that month. Hannah needed that job. More importantly, Ethan needed Hannah to keep that job. She drove another 100 yards. In the rearview mirror, the pickup became smaller. Another vehicle passed it, then another. Nobody stopped. Hannah tightened her hands around the steering wheel. Her father's voice surfaced from somewhere she didn't invite it. "If there's no road—" "No," Hannah whispered. She glanced at the fuel gauge. Nearly empty. Then at the clock. 5:31 p.m. Then back at the mirror. The man had stepped away from the truck and was rubbing his hands together. Hannah thought about the $17 in her wallet. 10 for gas, 5 for Ethan's breakfast, 2 for an emergency. She thought about Friday. She thought about cinnamon cereal. She thought about how expensive one bad decision could become when you were poor. Then she thought about what cold did to people who stood outside too long. The next intersection approached. Hannah could continue straight toward the hospital. Instead, she turned left, then left again. A minute later, the Malibu rolled back toward the stranded pickup. The older man watched her approach with visible surprise. Hannah pulled onto the shoulder and switched on her hazard lights. For a moment, she remained behind the wheel. "This is stupid," she whispered. Maybe it was. She grabbed her coat tighter, stepped into the cold, and walked toward the stranger. The man straightened. "I'm all right, ma'am," he called before she even reached him. Hannah stopped several feet away. "You don't look all right." A faint smile crossed his face. "Truck disagrees with me." Hannah looked past him at the open hood. "You tried jumping it?" Was about to ask the next person who stopped. Hannah glanced at the empty road behind them. That might be a while. The man laughed once. Hannah walked toward the engine. "What year? 1998. Ford F-150. She leaned closer. The smell reached her before she touched anything. Her expression changed. The stranger noticed. What Hannah looked down toward the engine bay. "That battery might not be your biggest problem." He stepped beside her. "You know trucks?" Hannah hesitated. Once the answer would have been easy. Now she simply said, "I know enough to look before I start connecting cables." The man studied her for a moment. Not her uniform, not her old car. Her. That distinction would matter later. Neither of them knew it yet. Hannah reached into her pocket for her phone, turned on the flashlight, and leaned farther beneath the hood. Behind her, the Malibu's fuel light continued glowing. Inside her wallet waited $17, and before the night was over, every last one of them would be gone. Hannah held her phone between her shoulder and cheek, angling the flashlight deeper into the Ford's engine bay. "Try starting it again." The older man climbed behind the wheel. The starter turned. The engine coughed, once struggled, then died. "Stop!" The man switched off the ignition and stepped back out. Hannah crouched beside the front fender. The pavement was cold enough to bite through the knees of her work pants, but she barely noticed. She had already caught the smell of gasoline, faint but unmistakable. She followed the fuel line with the light. There. The man leaned closer. A dark wetness had collected around a deteriorated section of hose. "You've got a leak. That bad enough that I wouldn't keep trying to start it." He exhaled through his nose. "I was hoping it was the battery. Battery would have been cheaper. That's usually how my luck works." Hannah almost smiled. She stood and brushed grit from her knees. "What's your name, Walter?" "Walter Bennett. Hannah White." He offered his hand. His palm was cold. "Thank you for coming back, Mrs. White. Hannah is fine." Walter nodded. Something about him seemed unusual. His field jacket was old, but his posture remained disciplined. His boots were worn, but carefully maintained. He did not complain about the cold or immediately ask what Hannah could do for him. Instead, he looked toward her Malibu. "You were headed somewhere." "Work." His expression changed. "What time?" Walter checked his wristwatch. 5:39. "You should go." Hannah looked at him. "You have somebody coming, I'll figure something out." "That wasn't my question." Walter gave a small, embarrassed smile. "No." Hannah pulled out her phone. 1%. She tried searching for a towing company. The screen dimmed. Walter reached for his own phone. "Mine died about 40 minutes ago." "Of course it did. There's a gas station about a mile back. I saw it." Walter nodded toward the truck. "I can walk." Hannah looked at the temperature displayed on her dashboard. 32 degrees. The wind made it feel colder. "You're not walking. I've walked farther." "I'm sure you have." Walter's eyebrows lifted slightly. "But tonight you're getting in the car." For the first time, he laughed. It was quiet and tired. "Yes, ma'am." The gas station sat between a tire shop that had closed for the night and an empty fast food building. Half the fluorescent sign above the canopy had burned out. Hannah parked near the entrance. Inside, the clerk barely looked up from his phone. Walter approached the counter and asked about a towing service. The clerk pointed toward a handwritten number taped beside the register. Walter tried the landline. No answer. He called again. Voicemail. Another one, Hannah asked. The clerk shrugged. Only guy I know around here. Walter reached into his wallet. At least let me get a gas can and something to patch the line enough to move the truck somewhere safer. The station carried a few emergency automotive supplies behind the counter. Walter placed a small fuel can hose repair tape and clamps on the counter. Then he handed over his card. The clerk inserted it. Nothing. Again. Nothing. System's acting up, the clerk said. Cash only right now. Walter opened his wallet. 2 receipts, a driver's license, several cards. No cash. Hannah felt the $17 in her own wallet before she even touched it. Walter looked at her. No, I didn't say anything. You were about to. I was about to tell you to move. Hannah? Walter? His mouth tightened. You're already late. She looked at the clock above the register. 5:52. He was right. Every minute mattered now. So did every dollar. Hannah opened her wallet. The 10, the 5, and the 2 ones were still folded exactly as she had arranged them at home. Gas, breakfast, emergency. She stared at them. Friday was 2 days away. She could ask Mrs. Parker for a ride tomorrow. There were eggs at home, a little flour. He didn't need cinnamon cereal. He wanted it. There was a difference. But Hannah hated how often poverty forced her to teach her child that difference. She took out the 10 and $1. Walter immediately shook his head. No, it's $11. That's not the point. It'll get your truck somewhere safer. I can wait. For what? He had no answer. Hannah placed the money on the counter. The clerk rang up the supplies. Walter looked genuinely uncomfortable now. I can repay you as soon as I didn't ask you to. Hannah? She took the bag from the clerk. You planning to stand here arguing until my next shift? Walter fell silent. Hannah walked toward the door. Then she heard his stomach growl. She stopped. Walter pretended not to notice. Hannah looked toward the small, heated food case. A wrapped turkey sandwich sat beside 2 breakfast burritos that looked as though they had been there since morning. Beside the register was a coffee machine. She looked into her wallet. $6. 5 for Ethan's breakfast. One of the emergency dollars remained because the supplies had taken the other. Walter saw her looking. Don't. I'm buying coffee. For yourself. Sure. Hannah took 2 small paper cups. Hannah, you drink it black. Walter stared at her. Usually. Good. Sugar costs extra. That earned another reluctant smile. She filled both cups. The sandwich was $3.49. 2 coffees brought the total just under $6 after tax. Hannah placed her final bills on the counter. For half a second, her fingers stayed on them. She saw Ethan at the kitchen table. Friday promise. She saw the glowing fuel light. She saw Patricia Morgan checking the attendance sheet. Then she released the money. The register closed. Her wallet was empty. Outside, Walter stood beneath the gas station canopy while Hannah tore the sandwich wrapper open. She handed it to him. No, not this again. You just spent your last cash. You don't know that. Walter looked at the empty wallet still in her hand. Hannah followed his eyes. Okay, you know that. Was that all you had? Hannah tore the sandwich in half. She handed him 1 piece. Enough for tonight. Walter did not take it immediately. His expression changed in a way Hannah couldn't read. Not pity, something heavier. Finally, he accepted it. They ate beneath the harsh fluorescent lights while trucks passed on the road beyond the station. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Walter asked, How did you know about the fuel line? I studied industrial equipment maintenance. Studied past tense. Why Hannah sipped her coffee. Life. Walter waited. Hannah appreciated that he didn't push. After a while, he said, Army taught me machinery first, then logistics, then people. Which one was hardest, people? Hannah smiled. At least machines tell you when something's wrong. Walter looked at her. People do too. We just get better at ignoring the noise. The sentence stayed between them. Hannah checked the time. 6:09. She was officially late. Very late. We need to move. They returned to the Ford. Using the supplies from the station, Hannah made a temporary repair, not enough for normal driving, but enough to move the pickup off the exposed shoulder to a safer gravel turnout nearby. Walter watched every movement. You sure you only studied this half a certification? That's more than some people with a whole certificate remember. Flattery doesn't refund my $17. Walter laughed. Fair. Once the truck was secured, Hannah let Walter use a charger in the Malibu. After several minutes, his phone finally came alive. The screen filled with missed calls. Hannah noticed them but said nothing. Walter stepped away and made one short call. Yes, he said. I'm fine. A pause. No. Don't send everybody. Another pause. Walter glanced toward Hannah. Just send someone for the truck. He ended the call. Someone coming, yes. Good. Hannah turned toward her car. Hannah. She looked back. Walter held something small between his fingers. A bronze challenge coin worn smooth around the edges. He offered it to her. She frowned. What's that? Something I've carried a long time. On one side was a simple raised image of a bridge. Around its edge were 4 words. Leave no one behind. Hannah shook her head. No, it's not money. That makes it worse. Walter looked surprised. If it matters to you, keep it. I want you to have it. And I want you to stop trying to pay me. I'm not paying you. Then we're good. Walter looked down at this coin. For a moment, his thumb moved across the bridge as if the object held a memory too private to explain. Hannah softened. Keep it, Walter. He slowly closed his fingers around it. All right. She climbed into the Malibu. Walter tapped the roof once. Thank you for seeing me. Hannah looked up at him through the open window. I saw a broken truck. No. His expression became serious. You saw somebody everybody else had decided wasn't their problem. Hannah didn't know what to say to that. So she gave him a small nod. Then she drove away. Walter stood beneath the roadside light watching the old Malibu disappear toward Kansas City. Only after Hannah's taillights vanished did another vehicle arrive for him. But before Walter climbed inside, he looked toward the road once more. He repeated her name quietly. Hannah White. Then he glanced at the license plate number he had written on the back of an old receipt. Inside the Malibu, Hannah was too busy worrying about Patricia, her empty wallet, and the needle hovering near E to notice the small bronze object resting deep inside the center cup holder. Walter had slipped the challenge coin there while she was putting away the repair supplies. By morning, Hannah would find it, and by then the man she believed she had left beside an old broken pickup would already know exactly where she lived. By the time Hannah pulled into the employee parking lot at St. Catherine Medical Center, the dashboard clock read 6:37 p.m., 37 minutes late. She turned off the Malibu and sat still for a moment. The fuel needle rested almost on empty. Her wallet was completely empty. And somewhere behind her, a stranger named Walter Bennett was waiting beside an old pickup with $17 worth of help that Hannah could not afford to give. Yet strangely, she did not regret stopping. She hurried inside. The hospital laundry department occupied a windowless section of the lower level. The air was always warm there, filled with the smell of detergent and hot cotton. Industrial washers rumbled behind thick doors, while carts of sheets moved constantly through the room. Patricia Morgan was waiting beside the time clock. She was 52, practical, observant, and known for remembering exactly when every employee arrived. She looked at the clock. Then at Hannah. 37 minutes, I know. This is your second late arrival this month. I know that too. Patricia folded her arms. What happened? Hannah considered telling her everything. The stranded veteran, the leaking fuel line, the gas station. Instead, she said someone needed help on the road. Patricia waited for more. Hannah didn't offer it. You could have called. My phone died. Hannah, I like you, but I have 23 people on this shift. If I make exceptions for everyone, I don't have a schedule anymore. I understand. One more late arrival and I may have to move you off your regular shift. That frightened Hannah more than she allowed her face to show. Her regular schedule was what made childcare possible. Understood. Patricia studied her. You okay, yes? It was not entirely true, but Hannah had work to do. For the next 3 hours, she moved between carts, washers, and folding stations. She kept her head down and worked quickly. Around 9:20 something changed. Hannah heard it before anyone else did. Clank. She stopped. The large linen press continued running. Clank. There it was again. A faint metallic knock beneath the machine's normal vibration. A coworker beside her shrugged. This thing always sounds terrible. Hannah stepped closer. The vibration felt wrong. She watched the roller assembly. Clank. Hannah hit the emergency stop. The machine groaned to silence. Why'd you shut it down? Someone called. Something's loose. A maintenance technician was summoned. He arrived irritated. What's the problem? Hannah pointed toward the bearing housing. Check that side. The technician crouched, removed the cover, and stared. The bearing was badly worn. Another few hours of operation could have damaged the roller assembly, or worse, caused a mechanical failure while someone was working beside it. Good catch, he muttered. 10 minutes later, several people were discussing the damaged bearing. The technician explained what had happened as though he had discovered it himself. Hannah heard him. She said nothing. She had become accustomed to being useful without being noticed. But across the room, Patricia had seen everything. At 2:11 a.m., Hannah finally clocked out. Her body hurt. Her stomach was empty. She reached the parking lot and climbed into the Malibu. The engine started. Barely. Come on, she whispered. Just get us home. She reached for an old coffee cup in the center console. Something metallic shifted underneath it. Hannah frowned. She removed the cup. A bronze coin lay beneath it. She picked it up. On one side was an eagle. On the other was a bridge. Around the edge were the words, "Leave no one behind." Hannah immediately knew Walter had put it there. She shook her head. I told you no, but her thumb remained on the bridge. For reasons she couldn't explain, she thought of her father. Whenever life had cornered him, he used to tell her the same thing. We'll build a bridge. Hannah slipped the coin into her coat pocket. Then she drove home. The fuel warning light remained on the entire way. At 2:46 a.m., the Malibu rolled into the driveway. Hannah whispered a thank you to the car, as though it were an exhausted old friend. Inside the duplex was quiet. Mrs. Parker had fallen asleep on the couch while waiting. You're late, she whispered. Long night. Everything okay? Hannah gave the familiar answer. We'll make it? After Mrs. Parker left, Hannah checked on Ethan. He was asleep with one arm around his pillow. His backpack sat ready beside the bedroom door. Hannah kissed his forehead and went to the kitchen. She opened the refrigerator. 6 eggs, a little milk, flour, enough. At 6:12 a.m., Hannah was back in the kitchen after barely 3 hours of sleep. Ethan wandered in, rubbing his eyes. Do we have cereal better? He looked suspiciously at the bowl. Pancakes, luxury pancakes. What makes them luxury? Your mother made them. That doesn't make them luxury. Hannah pointed the spatula at him. Careful. Ethan laughed. That sound was worth more than breakfast cereal. Hannah made small pancakes and stretched the last syrup across both plates. Ethan ate two before noticing something. "You didn't get gas." Hannah paused. "How do you know the light was on yesterday?" "Sometimes having an observant child was inconvenient. I'll handle it. Did something happen?" Hannah sat across from him. She told him about the stranded man. "Not everything, just enough. The truck broke down, so I helped him. Was he scared? I don't know. Were you?" Hannah thought about it. "A little." Ethan looked at her plate. "Did it cost money?" There it was. Hannah could have lied. Instead, she nodded. "How much? $17. His eyes widened. "All of it. All of it." Ethan stopped eating. For a moment, Hannah worried she had frightened him. Then he asked, did he need it more? Hannah looked at her son. At that moment, yes. Ethan considered this. Then he pushed one of his pancakes onto her plate. "You can have this one." Hannah's throat tightened. She pushed it halfway back. Cher Ethan nodded. They split it. After breakfast, Hannah stood at the sink washing the plates. Ethan appeared beside her, holding her coat. Something fell from the pocket and struck the floor. "The challenge coin." Ethan picked it up. "What's this?" "The man gave it to me. I thought you didn't take anything." "I didn't. He cheated." Ethan turned the coin over. "There's a bridge, I noticed." He read the words slowly. "Leave?" "No. One behind." Hannah dried her hands and took the coin. "My dad used to say something like that." "Grandpa." "Yeah." Ethan smiled. "We'll build a bridge." Hannah looked at him. "Exactly." Then an unfamiliar sound came from outside. A deep engine. Then another. Then a third. Ethan went to the window. His expression changed. "Mom." Hannah continued drying a plate. "What you need to see this." She joined him. 3 black SUVs were turning onto their street, slowly. They looked almost absurd among the aging sedans and pickup trucks parked along the curb. The first SUV stopped, then the second, then the third, all directly outside Hannah's duplex. Curtains moved in neighboring windows. Ethan stepped closer to his mother. "Are those police? No." "Are you sure no?" Hannah's mind raced. Debt collector, hospital administration, something involving Walter. She looked down at the challenge coin in her hand. The clock above the stove read 6:43 a.m. The driver of the middle SUV stepped out. Then the rear passenger door opened. Walter Bennett emerged. But he looked different. The worn military jacket was gone. He wore a dark wool coat over a crisp shirt. His posture seemed straighter. Behind him, a professionally dressed woman stepped from another vehicle, followed by a tall man carrying a leather folder. Ethan whispered, "That's the guy, yes." Walter looked toward the duplex. His eyes found Hannah through the window. Hannah opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The morning cold touched her face. Walter approached alone. Hannah crossed her arms. "If you came here to repay $17, you brought too many cars." Walter smiled. "I didn't come to repay you." "Then why are you here?" He glanced at the challenge coin in her hand. For a moment, something painful passed through his expression. Then he looked back at Hannah. "Mrs. White, I came because I need your help." Hannah frowned. With what Walter turned toward the woman carrying the folder. She began walking toward them. Walter looked back at Hannah. "Something I should have fixed a long time ago." And for the first time, Hannah wondered whether the stranded man she had helped the night before had been carrying a story far heavier than a broken truck. Hannah remained on the porch as the professionally dressed woman approached. Behind her, the 3 black SUVs idled quietly along the curb. The scene was attracting attention. Mrs. Parker had already pulled her curtain aside. Across the street, Mr. Lewis stood beside his mailbox, despite having collected his mail the previous afternoon. Hannah looked at Walter. "You could have come in one car." Walter glanced behind him. That was not my decision. The woman reached the porch and extended her hand. Rebecca Collins. Hannah shook it cautiously. Attorney and executive director of Liberty Forge Veterans Foundation. Hannah looked at Walter again. Foundation Walter nodded. A second man approached. He was in his mid-40s, broad-shouldered, wearing a navy coat, and carrying a leather folder. Michael Turner, he said. I run our Kansas City program. Ethan appeared behind Hannah. He stayed half hidden inside the doorway. Walter noticed him. You must be Ethan. Ethan looked at his mother before answering. Yes, sir. Walter smiled. Your mother helped me last night. I know, she spent our cereal money. Hannah closed her eyes. Ethan, what you did. Walter tried not to laugh. Rebecca failed completely. Even Hannah eventually smiled. Go get ready for school. Ethan disappeared inside. Hannah turned back to Walter. Now tell me why you're here. Walter gestured toward the house. May we come inside? Hannah looked at the expensive vehicles and then at her tiny living room. No. Michael blinked. Hannah pulled her coat tighter. We can talk right here. Walter seemed to understand. Rebecca opened the leather folder and removed a white envelope. She offered it to Hannah. Hannah did not touch it. If that's money, take it back. It isn't, Walter said. You don't owe me anything. I know. Then what's inside an address? That made Hannah pause. Walter took the envelope from Rebecca and held it toward her. Please. Hannah accepted it. Inside was a single card. Liberty Garage, 1847, Benton Avenue, Kansas City, Missouri. Beneath the address was a handwritten time. 4:30 p.m. Hannah looked up. What is this A place that needs help? And what does that have to do with me? Walter took a moment before answering. I founded Liberty Forge 21 years ago. He explained that the foundation supported vocational programs for veterans and military families. Some taught construction, others focused on electrical work, welding, or automotive repair. Liberty Garage was one of them. Michael spoke next. We train veterans transitioning into civilian employment. We also accept military spouses, surviving family members, and a limited number of local residents who need vocational retraining. That sounds useful, Hannah said. It should be, Michael replied. The wording caught her attention. Should be, Michael looked at Walter. Walter answered. The Kansas City Garage is failing. Hannah looked toward the address again. Failing how enrollment is down. Completion rates are worse. Employers aren't hiring enough graduates. Operating costs keep rising. Rebecca added one major funding partner is reconsidering its support. How long? Walter looked directly at Hannah. Possibly 60 days. Hannah handed the card back. I'm sorry, but I still don't understand why you came here. Walter did not take it. Last night you diagnosed that truck in the dark. I found a leaking hose. You checked the battery first, then ignition, then fuel delivery. You didn't guess. Hannah shrugged. That's basic troubleshooting. Not to everyone. I'm not a mechanic. You studied industrial equipment maintenance. Hannah's expression tightened. I told you I didn't finish. You also made a temporary repair safely enough to move the truck. That doesn't make me qualified to rescue a training program. No. Walter's answer came quickly. It doesn't. Hannah appreciated that more than she expected. Then what are you asking? You asking? Walter pointed toward the card. Come there this afternoon. For what a test? Hannah almost laughed. You brought 3 SUVs to my house at 7 in the morning to offer me a test. When you say it that way, it does sound excessive. Rebecca looked toward the vehicles. I told him. Walter sighed. Hannah studied him. Something still bothered her. If you run a foundation like this, why were you alone in a 28-year-old pickup with no cash? Walter's expression changed. Michael looked away. Rebecca became very still. Walter glanced toward the bronze coin in Hannah's hand. That truck belonged to my brother. Hannah waited. Walter did not continue. Not yet. Instead, he said I was going somewhere I haven't wanted to visit for a long time. Hannah understood that boundary. She had a few places like that herself. Walter continued. Last night wasn't planned, Hannah. I wasn't testing strangers. The truck actually broke down. My phone actually died. And you actually spent money you couldn't afford. $17. I remember. So this is repayment. No. It sounds like repayment with paperwork. Michael lowered his eyes, hiding a smile. Walter stepped closer. If I wanted to repay $17, I could repay $17. That's exactly my concern. Walter nodded slowly. Fair. Hannah had expected defensiveness. Instead, he seemed to respect the objection. He pointed toward the card again. I'm not offering you a job. Good, I'm not offering you money. Even better, I'm asking you to show up. Why? Because I saw how you looked at that engine. Hannah said nothing. Walter continued. You were cold, you were late, you were worried about your own car. But when you opened that hood, something changed. Hannah remembered it. For several minutes, the bills and the hospital and the fuel gauge had disappeared. There had only been a problem, and the possibility of solving it. Walter had noticed. I haven't worked professionally on machines, she said. Then the test will prove that. And if I fail, you go home. That's it. That's it. Hannah looked toward Michael. Is that true? Michael nodded. I have equipment nobody's been able to diagnose properly. If Mr. Bennett thinks you're worth testing, I'm willing to give you a bench. A bench tools, machine. Problem. That language felt dangerously familiar. Hannah looked at the address again. From inside the house came Ethan's voice. Mom, I can't find my blue notebook under the couch. No, it isn't. It is a moment later. Oh. Hannah shook her head. Walter smiled. Then Hannah noticed the clock through the doorway. She needed to get Ethan to school. This is a bad time. Walter nodded. We should go. Rebecca and Michael began walking toward the vehicles. Walter remained. Hannah held out the challenge coin. And take this. Walter looked down. His face changed immediately. For the first time since arriving, the confident founder disappeared. For 1 second, Hannah saw the stranded man from the roadside again. That belonged to my brother, he said quietly. Then you definitely need to take it. Walter closed Hannah's fingers around the coin instead. I gave it away once before. To who? To who my brother gave it back. The answer made no sense, but Hannah could hear the history inside it. Walter stepped away. 4:30. I work tonight. Then come before your shift. I didn't say I was coming, no. He smiled faintly. But you haven't thrown away the card. Hannah looked down. He was right. Walter walked toward the middle SUV. Before getting inside, he turned. One more thing. What you told me last night, you don't take charity. I don't. Good. Walter opened the door. Neither does Liberty Garage. The 3 vehicles pulled away one after another. Within 30 seconds, Hannah's street looked ordinary again. Ethan came onto the porch wearing his backpack. Who is he? A man with a broken truck? That's not what I meant. Hannah looked at the address. Neither was she entirely sure anymore. Ethan pointed to it. What's Liberty Garage? Apparently a place that might close. Can you fix it? Hannah laughed. I couldn't even fix Mr. Bennett's truck. You knew what was wrong. That's different. Ethan considered this. Then he noticed the bridge on the challenge coin. We'll build a bridge. Hannah looked at him. Don't start. He grinned. Later that afternoon, after dropping Ethan with Mrs. Parker, Hannah sat behind the wheel of the Malibu, dressed for work. The hospital was to the west. Liberty Garage was 12 minutes in the opposite direction. On the passenger seat lay the address. Hannah started the engine. The fuel warning light appeared immediately. She had borrowed $5 from Mrs. Parker for gas, promising to repay her Friday. Hannah hated borrowing money. She hated uncertainty even more. But what she hated most was the quiet thought that had followed her all day. What if Walter had seen something in her that she had stopped seeing in herself? At the next intersection, Hannah had to choose: left toward St. Catherine, right toward Benton Avenue. She stared at the traffic light. Then she remembered Walter's words. "I'm not offering you a job. I'm asking you to show up." The light turned green. Hannah turned right. At 4:27 p.m., her battered Malibu pulled into the cracked parking lot of Liberty Garage. The building looked nothing like the headquarters of a wealthy foundation. Faded brick, a rusted garage door, a leaking gutter. Through the open service bay, Hannah saw workbenches, old engines, and several people in coveralls. Then she saw Walter. Beside him stood an older mechanic with gray in his beard and suspicion already written across his face. On the workbench between them sat a partially disassembled diesel engine. Walter checked his watch. 3 minutes early. Hannah stepped inside. The older mechanic folded his arms. "This her," Walter nodded. The mechanic looked Hannah up and down. Then he pointed at the dead engine. "Let's see what she actually knows." Hannah set down her bag. For the first time in years, someone placed a broken machine in front of her, not because they needed cheap labor, not because they needed a favor, but because they wanted to know what she could do. She rolled up her sleeves. "Where are the tools?" The older mechanic did not answer immediately. He simply studied Hannah, then nodded toward a red tool chest against the wall. "Everything you need should be in there. Should be, if you know what you need." Hannah almost smiled. Walter stepped between them. "Hannah White, this is Robert Jenkins, lead technician." Robert extended a grease-stained hand. 29 years. Hannah shook it. "Doing what fixing things people swear can't be fixed. Then we should get along." A young woman nearby laughed. Robert did not. "That's Nicole Harris," he said. "Army motor transport. 2 deployments. Now she's learning diesel systems." Nicole, 29, gave Hannah a small wave. Walter remained near the wall. Hannah looked at the engine. "What's wrong with it?" Robert folded his arms. "That's the test." She walked around the workbench. Small diesel engine, partially disassembled, older but serviceable. "What have you already replaced?" "Nothing." "Why?" "Because throwing parts at a problem isn't diagnosis." Hannah glanced at him. "Finally, something we agree on." Nicole covered another laugh with a cough. Hannah started with the obvious. "Fuel, air, electrical." She checked connections, examined the filters, and inspected visible wiring. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Hannah forgot about Walter, forgot about Robert watching, forgot that her hospital shift began soon. The machine became the entire room. Battery voltage. Nicole handed her a meter. "Good. Starter turns. Fuel pressure within range." Hannah frowned. "Then why won't you start?" Robert's eyebrow rose. "You talk to machines only when people are being unhelpful." This time even Robert smiled. "Barely." Hannah continued. Her first suspicion was a faulty sensor. She tested it. Normal. She tried another path. Still nothing. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Hannah became aware of Walter behind her. Maybe this had been foolish. Finding one fuel leak beside a road did not make her a technician. She had left school years ago. Knowledge faded. Skills rusted. Perhaps Walter had mistaken compassion for competence. Hannah straightened. "I was wrong." Robert looked interested. "About the sensor." So I start again. No excuse. No attempt to hide the mistake. Robert's expression changed slightly. Hannah returned to the wiring harness. This time she moved more slowly. She followed each section with her fingers. Then stopped. Nicole flashlight. Nicole leaned closer. Hannah reached behind the housing. There. A wire had rubbed against a metal bracket until the insulation wore through. From the normal viewing angle, the damage was almost invisible. Robert stepped forward. Well, I'll be damned. Hannah disconnected the damaged section. You have heat shrink tubing. Robert pointed toward the tool chest. Hannah repaired the wire, checked the connection twice, then stepped back. Try it. Nicole turned the ignition. The diesel coughed, then came alive. Its rough mechanical rhythm filled the garage. Nicole shouted over the noise. Yes. Hannah stared at the running engine. For a moment she was 29 again, sitting in a classroom, grease beneath her fingernails, a notebook filled with diagrams, a future that had not yet collapsed. She turned the engine off. The sudden silence felt strangely emotional. Robert inspected the repair. Clean. Hannah wiped her hands. You sound disappointed. I'm deciding. About what? Whether you're lucky. Hannah smiled. Let me know. She reached for her bag. Wait. Nicole stood beside the engine. How did you know to check there? The wire? Yeah. I checked that harness yesterday. You looked at it. Nicole frowned. Isn't that checking not always? Hannah put her bag down again. She pointed to the metal bracket. Look at the angle. When the engine vibrates, this harness shifts toward the bracket. Nicole leaned closer. The damage happened underneath. Exactly. So when you inspect something that moves, don't only look at where it sits when it's off. Think about where it goes when it's running. Nicole nodded slowly. Hannah continued explaining how she had eliminated the other possibilities. She even explained her wrong assumption about the sensor. Nicole seemed surprised. You're telling me the part you got wrong? That's usually the worth remembering. Across the garage, Walter looked at Robert. Robert was no longer watching the engine. He was watching Hannah teach. Michael Turner entered from the office carrying several folders. How'd she do? Robert grunted. She found it. Michael smiled. Walter asked, anything else? Robert nodded toward Hannah and Nicole. She explains well. Hannah heard him. I'm standing right here. I know. Michael opened one of the folders. Hannah, can we talk? She checked the time. 5:21. I have about 10 minutes before I need to leave. They moved into a small office overlooking the service bays. The furniture was old. A bucket sat beneath a stain in the ceiling. Hannah looked around. This place really is struggling. Michael laughed without humor. Now you understand why we didn't bring you here in the SUVs. Walter sat across from her. Michael placed a paper on the desk. We'd like to offer you a paid apprenticeship. Hannah stared at him. You decided that from one engine? No, Robert said from the doorway. I told them not to. Hannah looked at him. Thanks. You're welcome, Michael continued. The apprenticeship includes supervised training certification support and hands-on work. Hannah looked at the hourly rate. Her excitement faded. It was less than she earned at St. Catherine. Not dramatically less. But when every dollar already had a job, not dramatically could still mean disaster. Walter noticed. What? Hannah pushed the paper back. I can't. Michael seemed surprised. You haven't heard the rest? I saw the number. There are opportunities for increases after certification. After? Yes. I have rent now. Nobody answered. Hannah pointed at the paper. This might be a good opportunity for someone who can survive 6 months waiting for their future. She stood. I can't. Walter did not try to stop her. That surprised Hannah. She picked up her bag. Thank you for the test. Robert said, you passed. Hannah looked back. That doesn't mean I can afford the prize. Then she left. Walter followed her outside. The sky was already darkening. Hannah reached her Malibu. Hannah? She turned. If you're about to offer to make up the difference personally, don't. Walter stopped. Apparently, that was exactly what he had been considering. Hannah sighed. You still don't understand. Then explain it. I spent $17 on you because you needed help for one night. I didn't purchase a rich man who gets to solve my life the next morning." Walter absorbed that quietly. "I'm sorry." Hannah had not expected the apology. Walter continued, "You're right." She opened the car door. "But the offer stands exactly as written," he said, "no special money." "Then my answer stands too." Walter nodded. Hannah climbed inside. Before closing the door, she looked through the open service bay. Nicole was still standing beside the repaired engine. She was examining the hidden wire location Hannah had shown her. Something tightened in Hannah's chest. She had forgotten how good it felt to know something worth teaching. Walter followed her gaze. "You miss it." Hannah looked at him. "What this?" He gestured toward the garage. Hannah did not answer. Because she did. Terribly. She started the Malibu. "Good night, Walter." "Good night, Hannah." She drove toward the hospital. Walter returned inside. Nicole was still studying the engine. "She's coming back, right?" she asked. Walter looked toward the disappearing taillights. "I don't know." Robert closed the tool chest. "She's got a kid." Walter turned. Robert shrugged. "People like you see an opportunity and think everyone can afford to take it." The words struck harder than Robert intended. Walter said nothing. Meanwhile, Hannah reached St. Catherine with 4 minutes to spare. She changed clothes and began her shift. But all night while loading sheets into industrial washers, she kept thinking about the damaged wire hidden behind the metal housing, about Nicole asking questions, about the engine coming alive. At 1:40 a.m., Patricia found Hannah staring at the linen press. "You're somewhere else tonight. I got offered another job." Patricia paused. Better. Hannah considered this question. "No." Then, after a moment, "Maybe." Patricia understood more than Hannah expected. Those are usually the dangerous ones. Hannah smiled faintly. When her shift ended, she returned home and found Ethan asleep. On the kitchen table sat the Liberty Garage offer. She had apparently brought it home without realizing. Hannah sat down. Rent, food, gas, childcare. She wrote the numbers on the back of an envelope. They did not work. No matter how she rearranged them, they refused to work. Then she noticed the challenge coin beside her keys. The bridge. Hannah picked it up. Her father's old words returned. "If there's no road, build a bridge." For years, Hannah had interpreted that as survival. Get through today, reach Friday, pay the next bill. But sitting at the kitchen table before sunrise, she wondered whether a bridge could lead somewhere instead of merely keeping you from falling. The next morning, Michael Turner received a call. "This is Hannah White." He sat straighter. I'm not accepting the apprenticeship." Michael's shoulders dropped. Then Hannah continued. "But I have another proposal. What kind I keep my hospital job? You get me part-time for 3 weeks." Michael grabbed a pen. "And after 3 weeks, we see whether I'm actually worth investing in." Michael smiled. "And if you are?" Hannah looked toward Ethan sleeping down the hall. "Then we build the next part of the bridge." Michael Turner was silent for several seconds. "You want to rewrite the offer, I want to make it possible," Hannah said. She sat at the kitchen table with a pencil, 3 bills, and a notebook filled with numbers. "If I leave St. Catherine now, I lose guaranteed hours. I can't gamble rent money on something that might work 6 months from now." Michael replied, "The apprenticeship was designed as a full-time program. Then maybe that's part of your problem." Another silence. Hannah continued, "Give me 3 weeks. Afternoons at Liberty Garage before my hospital shifts, plus Saturdays. Pay me only for the hours I work. If I'm useful, we talk again. And if you're not, you stop paying me." Michael laughed quietly. "You negotiate like Robert. I'll pretend that's a compliment. I need to talk to Walter. Talk to whoever you need. I have to wake my son in 20 minutes. Michael called back before Ethan finished breakfast. "You've got 3 weeks. Hannah looked at the challenge coin beside her coffee mug. "Then I'll see you this afternoon." She hung up. Ethan was eating toast. So you took the job, part of it. Why only part? Because sometimes being brave doesn't mean jumping. What does it mean checking how deep the water is first? Ethan considered this seriously. That sounds less brave. It's also how you stay alive. He grinned. For the next several days, Hannah's life became a schedule measured almost to the minute. Wake Ethan. School, sleep, Liberty Garage, hospital, home after 2 in the morning. Repeat. By Thursday, she was eating dinner from a plastic container in the Malibu between jobs. By Friday, her paycheck finally arrived. The first thing Hannah bought was gas. The second was groceries. The third was cinnamon cereal. When she placed the box on the kitchen counter, Ethan raised both hands in celebration. We're rich, absolutely not. But we have the expensive cereal. We have 1 box of cereal, basically millionaires. Hannah laughed harder than the joke deserved. That evening, however, Ethan found something on the kitchen table that made him stop laughing. Hannah's notebook was open. Rent $925, electric $118, car insurance $94, groceries, child care, gas. Every number had been calculated twice. Beside them, Hannah had written the hourly wage offered by Liberty Garage. Ethan stared until she entered. What are you doing, nothing? She saw the notebook. Ethan. He pointed at the numbers. If you work at the garage, we won't have enough. Hannah closed the notebook. That's grown-up stuff. I can help. With what? He hesitated. My field trip. Hannah's expression changed. His class was visiting the Kansas City Science Center the following month. He had been talking about it for weeks. What about it? It costs $28. I know, I don't have to go. Hannah stared at him. You are going, but if you need to know. Her answer was sharper than she intended. Ethan lowered his eyes. Hannah immediately crouched beside him. Listen to me. You do not have to make yourself smaller because money is tight. I just wanted to help. I know. She touched his cheek. And one day when you're grown, you'll have plenty of chances to worry about bills. I'm not giving you mine at 9. But are we okay? Hannah looked toward the notebook. We're building. The next afternoon at St. Catherine, Patricia Morgan stopped Hannah near the laundry office. I need you for a minute. Hannah followed her inside. Patricia handed her a printed incident report. It concerned the linen press Hannah had stopped days earlier. Under Employee Identifying. Hazard was one name. Hannah White. Hannah looked up. You wrote this? I wrote what happened. The maintenance guy said he found the bearing. The maintenance guy arrived 12 minutes after you shut down the machine. Hannah smiled slightly. Patricia leaned against the desk. You know equipment? A little, more than a little. Hannah hesitated. I was studying industrial maintenance before my husband died. Patricia's expression softened, but Hannah continued before sympathy could enter the conversation. I didn't finish. That doesn't erase what you learned. Hannah looked down at the report. It felt strange seeing her ability acknowledged but eventually you learned to overlook yourself. That afternoon at Liberty Garage, Robert handed Hannah a faulty alternator assembly. You're late. 2 minutes. Late is late. Are you always this cheerful? Only with people I like? Nicole laughed from another workbench. Hannah had begun working closely with her. Nicole learned quickly, but second-guessed herself constantly. Whenever Robert asked her a question, she often knew the answer and then talked herself out of it. That day, Hannah watched her diagnose a faulty voltage regulator correctly. Nicole immediately changed her mind. Wait, maybe it's the rotor. What did your first test tell you? Hannah asked. Regulator. And the second regulator. So why are you changing your answer? Nicole shrugged. Because I'm probably missing something. Hannah put down her wrench. Who taught you that? Nicole looked confused. Taught me that your first assumption should be that you're wrong. Nicole became quiet. Hannah knew that silence. She had lived inside it herself. Check your work, Hannah said. Always. But don't confuse humility with believing everybody else must know more than you. Nicole tested the regulator once more. She had been right. Robert watched from across the bay. Later, Michael asked Hannah to join him in the office. Walter was already there. So, Walter asked. So, what do you hate us yet? I'm considering it. Michael smiled, but his expression quickly became serious. We have a problem. He turned his laptop toward Hannah. An email filled the screen. Their largest private funding partner was reviewing Liberty Garage's performance. Walter summarized it. They've given us 30 days to do what show measurable improvement. Hannah looked at the figures. Enrollment down, completion rates down, employment placements down. The garage had been losing money for months. What happens after 30 days? Michael answered. If they pull funding, we probably close. Hannah leaned back. How many students currently? 26. And staff 8. People depending on this place for work. More than that if you include families. Walter stood near the window. I can cover the shortfall. Hannah looked at him. Then why haven't you, Walter, turned? Because I'm starting to wonder whether keeping something alive and making it healthy are two different things. Hannah remembered the $17. Money could solve tonight. It could buy gasoline, coffee, a sandwich, but it could not repair everything that made someone stranded in the first place. What are students dropping out for? She asked. Michael opened another spreadsheet. Different reasons. I don't want the spreadsheet. He looked surprised. I want the people. Robert appeared at the doorway. What does that mean? Hannah stood. It means somebody should ask them. Over the next hour she did. One veteran had missed 3 classes because his car broke down. A single father could attend only until 5 because childcare closed at 6. Another student had accepted warehouse work because he couldn't spend 4 months training without income. Nicole listened from nearby. Finally, she said, nobody asked us this when we enrolled. Michael looked uncomfortable. We have exit surveys. Nicole shook her head. An email survey isn't the same as asking somebody why they stopped showing up. Hannah looked around the garage. Old tools, good instructors, half-empty workbenches. A program designed to help people rebuild their lives had somehow been built around the assumption that those people had enough stability to attend it. Hannah almost laughed at the contradiction. Walter noticed. What? You're teaching people how to cross a river, Hannah said. But your classroom is on the other side. Nobody spoke. Robert slowly folded his arms. So what would you change? Hannah looked at the clock. Her hospital shift began soon. I don't know yet. She picked up her bag. But I know where I'd start. Where with the reasons people can't get through the door. As Hannah walked toward the service bay, Michael called after her. 3 weeks, remember. She turned. That was before you told me this place had 30 days. Outside, Hannah climbed into her Malibu. For the first time, Liberty Garage no longer felt like Walter Bennett's problem. She thought of Nicole. 26 students, 8 employees, families she had never met. Then she thought about Ethan offering to surrender his field trip because he had seen numbers on a page. Numbers never told the whole story. People did. Hannah started the engine. The fuel gauge rose comfortably above a quarter tank now. A small thing, but after the week she had survived, it looked almost luxurious. Before pulling away, Hannah glanced through the garage window. Walter stood alone beside the workbench. The wealthy founder who could write a check large enough to keep the building open was finally beginning to understand that money might be the easiest part of the problem. And Hannah, who had arrived only to prove she could repair a machine, was beginning to see something far larger that needed fixing. By Saturday morning, Hannah had filled 3 pages of her notebook, not with engine diagrams, with reasons. No childcare, no transportation, work schedule changed, couldn't afford unpaid training, had to take second job, no evening classes. Hannah sat at the Liberty Garage break room table, reading the list again. 26 people were officially enrolled, but only 17 attended consistently. Coffee Nicole stood beside her holding the pot. If it can still legally be called coffee. Nicole poured anyway. Hannah tapped the notebook. How long does it take you to get here? 2 buses? How long? About an hour and 20 minutes. One way. Nicole nodded. If I miss the connection, almost 2. Hannah stared at her. You spent 3 hours traveling for a class. Sometimes 4. And nobody thought that mattered. Nicole shrugged. They asked whether I had reliable transportation when I applied. What did you say, yes? You don't. I reliably take the bus. Hannah laughed. Then she stopped because Nicole was serious. That sentence explained more about Liberty Garage's problems than half the reports Michael had shown her. At 10, Hannah gathered Michael, Robert, Nicole, and Walter around a scarred workbench. She placed her notebook in the center. You don't have an enrollment problem. Michael frowned. Our enrollment is down 28%. You have an access problem. Robert leaned against the bench. Explain. Hannah pointed at her notes. You built a good program for people whose lives are already stable. Michael objected. We serve people trying to rebuild their lives. Exactly. Hannah looked at him. So why does your schedule assume they have reliable cars, daytime availability, childcare, and enough savings to train without earning? Nobody answered. Hannah continued. Run evening sessions. Robert shook his head. With what money we earned some. That got his attention. How repair work. We already repair training equipment. I mean real equipment. Hannah explained her idea. Small motels, laundromats, churches, community centers, businesses that could not afford dealership-level service rates. Liberty Garage could accept carefully selected repair jobs. Students would train on actual equipment under supervision. And they get paid for the productive hours, Hannah said. Robert's face hardened. No. Why? Because I've seen programs use trainees as cheap labor. So have I. Then you should know better. I do. Hannah pushed another sheet across the bench. It contained a simple structure she had worked on after her hospital shift. Limited hours, supervised work, transparent hourly compensation, no unpaid customer jobs disguised as education. Robert read it. You made this last night, between one load of hospital sheets and another. Walter smiled slightly. Robert didn't, but he kept reading. Rebecca Collins joined them by video call that afternoon. As an attorney, she immediately found 6 problems with Hannah's plan. Insurance, liability, wage classification, customer agreements, student supervision, certification limits. Hannah listened to every objection. Then she asked, can they be solved? Rebecca paused. Yes. Then they're not reasons to stop. Walter looked amused. Rebecca smiled. I'm beginning to understand why you like her. I'm right here, Hannah said. By Monday, Michael had contacted 11 local businesses. 8 declined. 1 never returned the call. A laundromat owner said he already had a technician. The 11th was the Riverside Motor Lodge, a 40-room motel whose laundry room had become a graveyard for aging commercial machines. The owner, Mr. Howard, agreed to let Liberty Garage inspect 6 washers. Inspect, he emphasized. No promises. No promises. Hannah agreed. The machines arrived Tuesday afternoon. They were ugly. Dented panels, mineral deposits, old hoses. One had a handwritten warning taped across its lid, shakes like crazy. Nicole read it. Professional diagnosis. Hannah smiled. Very technical. Robert assigned 2 students to each machine. Hannah stood in front of the first washer. A faded manufacturer badge remained above the control panel. She touched it. Something stirred in her memory. She had studied this exact series years ago. Not the same machine, the same design. For an instant, the garage disappeared. Hannah was back in a community college lab. Her husband, Marcus, was still alive. Ethan was small enough to sleep against her chest. Her instructor had once told her she had unusually good diagnostic instincts. You could specialize in commercial systems, he had said. She had believed him. Then life changed. Hannah. Nicole's voice brought her back. You okay, yeah? Hannah removed the rear panel. Let's see what's wrong. The first machine had a damaged suspension component. The second had a drain pump problem. The third had been incorrectly repaired before it arrived. Students worked slowly. Robert corrected them constantly. Hannah made them explain every decision. Don't tell me what part you want to replace, she said. Tell me why. By evening, 1 washer was running, then a second. Nicole solved the third almost entirely herself. When it powered up, she smiled so widely Hannah laughed. "You did that?" Nicole shook her head. "You helped. I asked questions. You knew which questions. That's what you're learning." Mr. Howard arrived at 7. He inspected the machines suspiciously. How much Michael gave him the invoice. Mr. Howard looked surprised. "That includes labor, yes, and the students get paid a portion of every eligible labor hour." Mr. Howard looked toward Nicole. "You fixed this one?" Nicole hesitated. Hannah said nothing. This answer needed to belong to her? Nicole straightened. "Yes, sir." Mr. Howard pressed the start button. The washer began turning smoothly. "No shaking, no. Give me a 30-day guarantee and you can have the rest of our maintenance work." Michael stared at him. All of it if these hold. It was not a huge contract. It would not save Liberty Garage. But when Michael wrote the agreement on the whiteboard, everyone stopped to look. First commercial client, Riverside Motor Lodge. Robert stood beside Hannah. "One contract? One more than yesterday. We need a lot more." "I know." Robert looked toward Nicole, who was showing another student how to inspect a suspension spring. "You were right about one thing." Hannah turned dramatically. "Can someone record this? Don't ruin it." She smiled. Robert continued. "They learn differently when the machine belongs to somebody who needs it back. Because failure matters. So does success." Across the garage, Walter watched them. He had spent decades raising money, attending board meetings, and reading reports about outcomes, but the thing happening in front of him could not fit neatly into a spreadsheet. Nicole was standing straighter. A student who had barely spoken all week was asking Robert questions. Michael was calling another potential customer. And Hannah White, the woman Walter had first seen kneeling beside his broken pickup, was wiping grease from her hands with a satisfaction he had never seen on her face before. That evening, Ethan arrived with Mrs. Parker because Hannah's childcare arrangement had fallen through. He sat at an empty desk doing homework. After 20 minutes, he wandered toward his mother. "You fixed all these? We fixed 3. Can I push a button? So. Can I hold a wrench? No. Can I look? That's free." Ethan examined the open washer. "So this is what you wanted to do?" Hannah paused. "A long time ago. Why'd you stop?" She looked at him. "Because sometimes life changes the plan. Can you change it back?" The question was simple. The answer wasn't. "I don't know." Ethan nodded as if that were acceptable. Then he noticed a whiteboard near the office. Someone had erased an old training schedule, leaving most of it blank. Ethan picked up a marker. "Can I draw nothing inappropriate? I'm 9. That was not an answer. He grinned and started drawing. Hannah returned to the washer. An hour later, Walter entered the garage. He stopped beside the whiteboard. Ethan had drawn 2 cliffs with a crooked bridge connecting them. Underneath, in uneven letters, he had written, "We'll build a bridge." Walter stared at it. Hannah noticed. "My son." Walter nodded. Where did he hear that, my father? What does it mean? Hannah looked around the garage. Nicole learning, Robert teaching, Michael negotiating another service call, Ethan doing homework beside a toolbox. It used to mean we'd survive until tomorrow. Walter looked at her. And now Hannah considered the question. Maybe it means tomorrow can actually be different. Before Walter could respond, Michael rushed from his office carrying a document. His expression erased the warmth from the room. "Walter?" "What happened?" Michael handed him the paper. "The funding issue just got worse. Rebecca had uncovered a clause in Liberty Garage's property agreement. If their primary operating grant disappeared, the foundation could lose its lease protection." Hannah looked between them. "What does that mean?" Michael answered quietly. "It means if we don't prove this place can survive, we may not just lose the program." He looked around the old garage. We could lose the building, too. Behind him, Ethan's crooked bridge remained on the whiteboard. 30 days had suddenly become much shorter. Walter read the document twice. "How long have you known about this clause?" Michael looked uncomfortable. I found it during Rebecca's review. The lease protection is tied to the operating grant. If the grant disappears, the property owner can renegotiate or terminate. Robert swore under his breath. Nicole looked around the garage as though the walls had suddenly become temporary. Hannah watched Walter. He did not look angry. He looked tired. I can buy the building, he said. Hannah had expected that. So that's it. Walter turned toward her. What, you write a check? If it keeps the garage open, for how long? Silence. Hannah pointed toward the repaired motel washers. You can buy this building. Can you buy customers? Can you buy students who can actually attend? Can you buy employers who trust their training? No. Then buying the building doesn't fix the problem. Walter's jaw tightened. You think I don't know that? I think money is the tool you reach for first. Something changed in his expression. For a moment, Hannah wondered whether she had gone too far. Then Walter looked at the old pickup visible through the open service bay. You're right. Robert glanced at him. Walter walked toward the truck. Hannah followed. The Ford had been towed to Liberty Garage after the night they met. The temporary repair Hannah made was still visible beneath the hood. Walter placed one hand on the fender. This truck belonged to my younger brother. Daniel Walter looked surprised. The coin, Hannah said. You mentioned him. He nodded. Daniel Bennett. Army mechanic? Walter's thumb moved over a scratch in the paint. When he came home, everyone thought he'd be fine. He could rebuild an engine with his eyes half closed, but nobody wanted to hire the version of him that came home. Walter stared into the engine bay. He couldn't sleep. Crowds bothered him. He'd quit jobs because he felt trapped indoors. Then he'd be ashamed he quit. Hannah said nothing. He called me a lot, Walter continued, and I was doing well by then. So every time he had a problem, I sent money. Rent, car payments, groceries, whatever he needed. Walter gave a bitter smile. I thought I was a good brother. You were trying to help. I was trying to solve him. The sentence hung between them. One night Daniel told me, I don't need another check. I need somewhere I'm still useful. Walter swallowed. I told him we'd talk after a business trip. Hannah already knew what was coming. We never had that conversation. Daniel died the following year. Walter did not describe how. He didn't need to. Some grief became smaller when spoken. Other grief simply changed shape. Afterward, I started Liberty Forge, Walter said. I thought if veterans had somewhere to use what they knew, maybe fewer of them would feel discarded. Hannah looked back toward the garage. So Liberty was Daniel's bridge? It was supposed to be. Supposed to be Walter turned. 21 years later, I spend more time looking at performance reports than people. When a program fails, I increase funding or replace management. And Kansas City, I came here to close it. Hannah stared at him. The night your truck broke down, yes? Walter touched the Ford. I drove Daniel's truck because I hadn't driven it in years. I thought maybe I needed to remember why I started before deciding to end one of his programs. Hannah glanced toward him. And the breakdown real. The dead phone reel. The declined card, unfortunately, real. So I wasn't some test. Walter almost laughed. No? If I were designing a test, I'd choose better weather. Hannah smiled faintly. Walter's expression became serious again. Then you stopped. Because you looked cold. Everyone else kept driving. So did I. But you came back. Hannah looked toward the whiteboard where Ethan's crooked bridge remained. I almost didn't. That's why it mattered. Walter reached into his coat and removed a second challenge coin. It was newer than Daniel's. Same bridge, same words. Leave no one behind. We made these when Liberty Forge opened, Walter said. Daniel's coin became the design. Hannah pulled the old coin from her pocket. You've been carrying his all these years? Walter nodded. And you left it in my car. I think that night I needed someone else to carry it. Before Hannah could answer, Rebecca entered quickly from the office. Walter, we have another problem. Michael followed her. Rebecca placed several papers on the workbench. The property owner received an inquiry from a commercial developer. Robert's face hardened. What kind of inquiry? They're interested in the entire block. Michael looked toward Hannah. If we lose grant protection, they can offer market rate terms. And we can't afford that, Hannah said. Not even close. Walter immediately said, then I'll purchase. He stopped himself. Everyone noticed. Hannah said nothing. Walter slowly exhaled. What options do we have that don't involve me buying the answer? Rebecca almost smiled. We prove the garage is viable, quickly. Michael pointed towards the motel contract. This helps, but it's nowhere near enough. Hannah looked at the workbenches, then at Nicole, then at the whiteboard. 30 days. 1 customer, 26 students, a building they might lose. How many local businesses did you call? Hannah asked. 11. That's not enough. Robert folded his arms. What are you thinking? Hannah took a marker. On the whiteboard beneath Ethan's bridge, she wrote 30 days. Then beneath it, laundromats, motels, churches, shelters, small businesses. We stop waiting for people to discover us. Michael stepped closer. And we give the students real work. Nicole nodded. Real customers, real consequences, Robert added. Hannah looked at Walter. And if this place survives, it survives because it became useful again. The word struck him. Useful. Daniel's word. Walter looked toward his brother's truck. For 21 years, he had tried to honor Daniel by keeping programs alive. Now Hannah was asking him to do something harder. Let one prove it deserved to live. Walter nodded. 30 days. Hannah capped the marker. Then we'd better start building. By Monday morning, the whiteboard at Liberty Garage no longer looked like Ethan's drawing space. His crooked bridge was still there, but around it Hannah had written names, phone numbers, deadlines, and service appointments. 30 days had become 26. We need customers who can't afford dealership service but still need reliable equipment, Hannah said. Michael looked at the list. 3 laundromats, 2 motels, 4 churches, a daycare, 2 shelters, and 16 rejections. Robert drank his coffee. Excellent business strategy. Hannah pointed the marker at him. Did you bring encouragement today? No. Then bring tools. Nicole laughed from beneath an open washer panel. Not everything was going well. One repaired dryer had failed again after 12 hours. A student had ordered the wrong pump for a motel washer. Another customer refused to pay after discovering trainees had performed part of the work. Every mistake cost time, sometimes money. But something else was happening. Students were showing up. Evening attendance had nearly doubled. Nicole no longer waited for Robert to tell her what to check first. She had begun helping newer students. At 2:15 that afternoon, Michael entered with good news. Grace Community Church wants us to inspect their kitchen equipment. How much work? 2 commercial dishwashers and an ice machine. Robert nodded. That's something. And Maple Street Laundromat wants a maintenance estimate. Hannah added both names to the board. Walter watched from the office doorway. Later, he approached Hannah. Rebecca calculated the gap. What gap? What we need to keep operating if the grant is reduced. How bad? Bad. That's not a number, Walter told her. Hannah stopped writing. That's very bad. I can cover it. She looked at him. No. Hannah, I'm not talking about buying the building. I'm talking about giving the program breathing room. And what happens next year, we deal with next year. That's what you've been doing. Walter's expression hardened. I have the resources to prevent people from losing this place, and you should use them where money actually solves the problem, such as childcare, bus passes, certification fees, things stopping people from getting through the door. Walter stared at her. You're telling me how to spend my own foundation's money? Yes, Robert called from across the garage. She does that. Walter almost smiled. Hannah softened her tone. You gave Daniel checks because checks were easy. The smile disappeared. That's not fair. No, it probably isn't. She paused. But you told me that story for a reason. Walter looked toward Ethan's bridge. Hannah continued. If Liberty Garage can't become useful without you constantly rescuing it, Then we haven't fixed anything. Walter was silent for a long time. Finally, he nodded. No blank check, no blank check, but transportation and childcare. Those build access. Walter extended his hand. Deal? Hannah shook it. The next week became harder. At Maple Street Laundromat, Nicole incorrectly diagnosed a dryer motor. A replacement part was ordered. It arrived 2 days later. The motor wasn't the problem. Robert was furious. We just wasted 2 days and $180. Nicole's face fell. I'm sorry. Hannah examined the machine. What test did you skip? Nicole stared at the floor. Continuity at the thermal fuse. Why, I thought the motor sounded bad. Thinking isn't testing. Robert started to speak. Hannah raised a hand. She knows. Nicole looked at her. Am I paying for the part? No. Then who is the program? That's worse. Hannah understood. Mistakes felt different when someone else carried the cost. Then learn enough from it to make the $180 worth spending. They returned to the machine. Nicole found the failed fuse. The dryer ran 20 minutes later. Robert watched quietly. You're too easy on her, he told Hannah afterward. No, she cost us money. And she'll remember that fuse for the rest of her career. Robert considered this, then grunted. For Robert, that was practically agreement. Hannah made mistakes too. She scheduled 2 service calls too close together and left one customer waiting 3 hours. Another night she promised a repair before confirming that a part was available. The customer was angry. Hannah apologized herself. No excuses, no blaming students. Walter noticed that too. You take responsibility fast, he said. I don't have enough energy to invent explanations. At home, the pace began catching up with her. One evening, Hannah fell asleep at the kitchen table while Ethan did math homework. When she woke, a blanket covered her shoulders. Ethan was sitting opposite her drawing. What time is it? 8:40. Why didn't you wake me? You looked tired. Hannah rubbed her face. On his paper was another bridge. This one was bigger. Why do you keep drawing those? Ethan shrugged. Because yours is working. Hannah looked at him. What do you mean you have the hospital on one side? He pointed to one end, the garage on the other. Then to the bridge. And you're here? Hannah smiled. That's not how bridges work. It is in my picture. The next afternoon she brought the drawing to Liberty Garage. Ethan came with her because Mrs. Parker had an appointment. While Hannah worked, he taped his new picture beneath the original bridge on the whiteboard. By closing time, the garage was quiet. Hannah stood alone reviewing numbers. 7 paying customers, 2 repeat contracts, evening attendance up, 3 students scheduled for job interviews. Progress. But not enough. Michael entered holding his phone. We got another contract. Hannah looked up. Who? Northside Family Shelter. Her smile disappeared when she saw his expression. What they have, 3 commercial washers that keep shutting down, okay? They need them repaired immediately. How immediately? Tomorrow. Robert joined them. They serve more than 40 women and children. Hannah looked at the clock. Her hospital shift began in less than an hour. Michael said this could become our biggest community contract. Hannah grabbed her bag. Schedule the inspection for tomorrow morning. As she headed toward the door, Robert called after her. Hannah. She turned. If we take this one, we can't screw it up. Hannah looked at Ethan's bridge, then at the growing list of customers surrounding it. I know. None of them understood yet how true Robert's warning would become. Within days, those 3 washers would threaten everything Liberty Garage had spent the month building. 3 days after Liberty Garage returned the washers to Northside Family Shelter, Hannah's phone rang at 9:17 p.m. She was at St. Catherine pushing a cart of folded sheets toward an elevator. Michael's name appeared on the screen. She answered immediately. What happened? All 3 washers are down. Hannah stopped walking. All 3 within 2 hours. Her stomach tightened. That doesn't make sense. I know. The repairs had been different. One machine needed a drain pump. Another had a damaged control relay. The third had required work on its motor circuit. 3 separate faults. 3 separate repairs. Yet now all 3 were dead. Is Robert there on his way? What did the shelter say? They have 43 residents tonight. 12 are children. Laundry is already piling up. Hannah looked toward Patricia's office. I'll come after my shift. Hannah, that's 5 hours. She knew. I'll figure something out. Patricia was reading reports when Hannah knocked. I need to leave early. Patricia removed her glasses. Garage, yes, Hannah explained. Patricia listened without interruption. You understand I can't keep making schedule exceptions. I do. And you still need to go, yes. Patricia studied her for several seconds. Then she looked at the clock. Finish the cart you're working on. I can move someone from receiving for the last 3 hours. Hannah exhaled. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You owe me Saturday. Done. At 10:02, Hannah's Malibu pulled into the shelter parking lot. Nicole was already there. So was Robert. Inside the laundry room, the air smelled of detergent and damp fabric. Bags of sheets and towels were stacked against one wall. A shelter employee named Carla met them at the door. We have children who wet beds, she said quietly. We have women arriving with almost nothing. Clean towels and sheets aren't optional here. We'll find the problem, Hannah said. Robert had already opened the first machine. Pump is fine. Nicole stood at the second with a meter. Relay is responding. Hannah frowned. What about the third nothing obvious? Robert looked toward Nicole. Who did final inspection? Nicole's face changed. I did. All 3, yes. Robert exhaled sharply. Did you follow the checklist? Yes, every step, yes, because 3 machines don't suddenly, Robert. Hannah's voice stopped him. He looked at her. We diagnose first. I'm asking questions. You're deciding where the blame belongs before we know what failed. Nicole stared at the floor. Hannah handed her a meter. Start again. For nearly an hour, they checked every repair. Nothing explained the simultaneous failures. At 11:26, Hannah noticed something. The lights flickered. Barely. Then again. Did you see that? Nicole nodded. Robert looked toward the ceiling. Hannah walked to the electrical panel. Carla, have you had power problems? The lights dim sometimes. Since when? Months. Robert joined Hannah. You thinking voltage, I'm thinking 3 different machines suddenly failing at the same location isn't 3 machine problems. They measured the supply. Normal. Then it dropped. Recovered. Dropped again. Robert's expression changed. There it is. An unstable electrical supply was causing protective shutdowns. The washers were not failing. They were protecting themselves. Nicole leaned against a machine. So it wasn't our repairs? No, Hannah said. Relief spread across Nicole's face. Michael arrived shortly before midnight. When Hannah explained, he exhaled. Good. Carla looked at him. Good, I mean good that our repairs didn't fail. Carla glanced towards the mountain of laundry. But our washers still don't work. Michael's relief disappeared. Robert closed his tool case. This is a building electrical issue. They need a licensed electrician. Can we recommend someone? Michael asked. I know 2. Then we've done what we can. Hannah looked at the bags against the wall. A little girl wearing oversized pajamas stood in the hallway holding a folded blanket. Carla noticed Hannah looking. We're nearly out of clean bedding. Michael lowered his voice. This isn't our responsibility. The sentence was reasonable. Technically completely reasonable. Hannah looked at the washers. Then she remembered a freezing roadside. Walter standing beside a broken pickup. She had not caused his problem either. She had still stopped. Can we get 1 machine running safely? She asked. Robert shook his head. Not on unstable power. What about another circuit? Not without testing it. Then test it. Robert stared at her. Hannah, it's midnight. I know, we proved the fault isn't ours. I know, so what are we doing? Hannah looked toward Carla. Helping, silence. Nicole picked up her meter. I'm staying. Robert looked at her. Nicole shrugged. You heard the boss. Hannah isn't the boss. Nicole smiled. Could have fooled me. After testing, Robert identified a circuit in another section of the building with stable supply, but connecting a commercial washer there required a safe, temporary configuration. They moved one machine, slowly, carefully. At 1:18 a.m., it started. Water entered. The drum turned. Carla covered her mouth. "One is enough," she said. "It'll be slow," Hannah warned. "One is enough." Nicole loaded the first batch. Robert called an electrician who agreed to arrive at 7. Then they began processing laundry. Sheets, towels, blankets. Nobody had planned to stay. Everyone stayed. At 2:30, Walter arrived. He wore jeans and the old military field jacket from the night Hannah met him. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Michael called Rebecca. "Rebecca called me. We have it handled. I can see that." Walter looked around. Nicole was folding towels. Robert was monitoring voltage. Michael was carrying bags. Hannah stood beside the washer with a wrench in one hand and hospital ID still clipped to her uniform. Walter smiled faintly. "What nothing?" "That's not a nothing face." He looked toward the running machine. "Daniel used to say the job wasn't finished just because the manual said it was." Hannah understood. At 4:46 a.m., the last urgent load went into the dryer. Nicole sat against the wall, exhausted. "I have an interview at 10. Hannah looked at her. "You stayed knowing that." Nicole shrugged. They needed clean sheets. Walter heard her. He turned away for a moment. Perhaps because 21 years earlier, his brother had asked for somewhere he could still be useful, and now a young veteran was sitting on a laundry room floor before dawn, exhausted but needed. At 6:11, the electrician arrived. The Liberty Garage team finally left. Outside, sunrise was beginning to color the sky. Walter walked beside Hannah toward her Malibu. "You were right." "About what?" "The garage." Hannah opened her door. "It doesn't need to be rescued." "No. It needs to become necessary." Hannah nodded. Her phone rang. "Patricia." Hannah answered. "Hi." "Hannah, are you still at the shelter?" "Just leaving. Come see me this afternoon before your shift." Hannah closed her eyes. She had left work early. Maybe this was the consequence. "Am I losing my schedule?" Patricia paused. "No." "Then what is it?" "I submitted your name to hospital engineering." Hannah became still. "For what?" "They reviewed the linen press incident and your employment records." Hannah gripped the car door. Patricia continued. "There's an equipment support position opening." The world around Hannah seemed to quiet. Better pay, benefits, a real technical position, the kind of job she had once gone to school to earn. "They want to talk to you." Hannah looked through the garage van's windshield at Nicole sleeping in the passenger seat, then toward Walter. Then at the challenge coin resting in her coat pocket. Only weeks earlier, Hannah had been trying to survive until Friday. Now 2 doors were opening at once, and for the first time the hardest decision was no longer how to survive. It was deciding what kind of future she wanted to build. At 3:10 that afternoon, Hannah sat outside the engineering office at St. Catherine Medical Center wearing the cleanest blouse she owned. She had slept for less than 4 hours. Her hands still smelled faintly of machine grease despite scrubbing them twice. Patricia stepped into the hallway. "You look terrified." "I'm not terrified. You're twisting your challenge coin in your pocket." Hannah stopped. "How do you know that you've been doing it for 5 minutes?" Hannah released the coin. Patricia smiled. "Go in." The interview lasted 43 minutes. 2 engineering supervisors sat across from Hannah. Neither asked about Liberty Garage at first. They asked about St. Catherine. Why had she stopped the linen press? The sound changed. What changed the rhythm? There was a metallic knock that didn't match the normal rotation. They showed her maintenance records. They gave her hypothetical faults. Hannah did not know every answer. When she didn't know, she said so. Then she explained how she would find out. One supervisor finally closed his folder. "You never finished your certification, no?" "Why, my husband died." The room became quiet. Hannah continued before sympathy could take over. I had a little boy, and bills that didn't care about my plans. Would you finish it now if I had a way? The supervisor exchanged a glance with his colleague. The hospital offers tuition assistance for technical staff. Hannah sat straighter. We'd like to offer you an equipment support position. For a moment, she simply stared. The salary was higher than her laundry wage. Better hours, health benefits, tuition assistance, a path forward. Everything she had wanted 5 years ago seemed to be sitting on one sheet of paper. She should have said yes immediately. Instead, she thought about Liberty Garage, Nicole, Robert, Ethan's bridge on this whiteboard. When would I start? 2 weeks. Hannah left the office carrying the offer. Patricia was waiting. Well, I got it. Patricia smiled. You don't look happy. I am. But Hannah looked at the paper. I think I'd finally have too many choices. Patricia laughed. That's a better problem than having none. That evening, Hannah went to Liberty Garage. Nicole was preparing for her job interview follow-up. Robert was helping 2 students rebuild a pumpy assembly. Michael was reviewing customer invoices. The place felt different, not fixed. Alive? Walter sat in the office. Hannah entered and placed the hospital offer on his desk. He read it. That's good money. Better than here. Better benefits, too. Yes. And they'll help you finish certification. Yes. Walter returned the paper. Congratulations. Hannah frowned. That's it. What were you expecting? I don't know. A speech about loyalty, maybe. Walter leaned back. You should take it. Hannah stared at him. You're trying to save Liberty Garage. I am. And you want me to leave? I want you to stop confusing being needed with being trapped. The words hit harder than Hannah expected. Walter continued. You spent years doing what you had to do. Now you have an opportunity that protects Ethan and gives you the career you wanted. What about this place? It existed before you. Barely. And it needs to learn to exist without depending on one person. Hannah smiled faintly. Now you sound like me. I've had an annoying teacher. She laughed, then became serious. If I leave completely, Nicole loses someone she trusts. Then don't leave completely. Hannah looked at him. Walter pointed toward the bridge on the whiteboard. A bridge connects 2 sides, doesn't it? The answer came so simply that Hannah almost felt embarrassed for missing it. She didn't have to lose one life and destroy the other. But she would have to negotiate. Again. The following morning, Hannah returned to hospital engineering. I want the position. The supervisor smiled. Excellent. But I need 4 10-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days. His smile weakened. That's not the standard schedule, I know. Why I teach at a vocational garage. You just started there. I know. Is that going to interfere with your work here? No. How can you guarantee that? Because I've spent 5 years building my life around constraints. Scheduling is one of the few things I'm extremely qualified to do. He laughed despite himself. They discussed it for 20 minutes. Finally, he agreed to a 60-day trial schedule. Hannah left with the job, and 1 weekday available for Liberty Garage. Next came certification. She contacted the community college she had left years earlier. Some credits still counted. Others did not. She would need evening coursework and 2 practical assessments. For the first time, Hannah did not see the requirements as obstacles. They were simply parts. And parts could be assembled. That night she told Ethan. He was eating cinnamon cereal at the kitchen table. So you're not working in laundry anymore? Not after next month. You fix hospital machines, I'll help. And you still fix stuff at the garage 1 day a week. Maybe Saturdays sometimes. Ethan thought carefully. So you have 2 jobs. Technically. That sounds worse. Hannah laughed. They're better jobs. Oh. He took another spoonful, then looked at her. Are we okay now? The question stopped her. For years, Hannah's automatic answer had been ready. We'll build a bridge. It had meant don't be afraid. It had meant Mom will figure something out. It had sometimes meant I have no idea how we're going to survive this, but you are 9 years old, and you shouldn't know that. This time she didn't give him the old answer. We're getting there. Ethan smiled. I like that better. Why? Because it sounds like we're moving. Hannah looked away before he could see her eyes fill. 2 weeks later, she wore her new St. Catherine Equipment Support uniform for the first time. It was navy blue clean, with Hannah White stitched above the pocket. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror longer than necessary. Not because the uniform was beautiful. It wasn't. But the name above the pocket meant something. She had spent years being laundry, housekeeping, Ma'am Ethan's mom. Now the work she had once trained for had her name attached to it. Ethan appeared behind her. You look like you fix spaceships. I fix hospital equipment. Same thing. Before leaving, Hannah opened the kitchen drawer. Inside was Daniel Bennett's challenge coin. She picked it up. The bridge was worn smooth from years of someone else's fingers. Hannah put it into her pocket. At St. Catherine, her first week was humbling. She made mistakes. She asked questions. She learned unfamiliar systems. A younger technician showed her how to calibrate a pump she had never touched before. Hannah felt embarrassed for exactly 6 seconds. Then she remembered Nicole. Check your work. Don't confuse humility with believing everyone else knows more than you. So Hannah learned. And on Wednesdays she returned to Liberty Garage. The program was improving. 8 paying customers had become 11. Evening attendance remained strong. Nicole received a second interview with a regional fleet maintenance company. Michael had developed a proper service schedule. Robert had stopped pretending he hated Hannah's ideas. But the funding review was approaching. One afternoon, Rebecca gathered everyone around the workbench. The evaluators come Friday. Michael looked at the board. We're not where I wanted us to be. Neither are they expecting perfection, Rebecca said. They're expecting evidence. Walter stood near Daniel's old truck. I can speak to them. Hannah looked at him. No. Walter raised an eyebrow. No, if you walk into that meeting as the wealthy founder and tell them the garage deserves to survive, they'll hear. Walter Bennett. What should they hear? Hannah looked toward Nicole, who was helping a new student diagnose a starter problem, the people who actually use this place. Robert nodded. Students. Customers, Michael added. Employers, Rebecca said. Hannah looked at the numbers on the board. They were not miraculous. 4 students had found employment. 3 businesses had signed ongoing service agreements. Attendance had improved. Revenue was still modest. Mistakes still happened. The garage was still fragile. But it was real. Walter approached Hannah after everyone left. You know I could guarantee the building. I know you still don't want me to. No. What if Friday goes badly? Hannah considered that. Then we deal with what's true. Walter looked at Daniel's coin in her hand. You're willing to let this place fail. If the only way it survives is pretending it's stronger than it is, then it hasn't survived. Walter slowly nodded. The old version of him would have hated that answer. The man standing there now understood it. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. 3 evaluators entered Liberty Garage at 9. There were no black SUVs, no expensive presentation, no catered breakfast. Just coffee and paper cups machines on workbenches, students in coveralls, and Ethan's crooked bridge still visible on the whiteboard. The lead evaluator opened her folder. Mr. Bennett, would you like to begin? Walter looked toward Hannah, then toward Nicole. No, he said. He stepped backward. I think I've talked enough for this place. Nicole's eyes widened. Walter gestured toward her. Ask the people who had to build it. And suddenly the future of Liberty Garage belonged not to the richest man in the room, but to the people who had finally been given a reason to believe they were useful again. Nicole looked at Walter as if he had just pushed her onto a stage. Me. Walter nodded. You? The three evaluators waited beside the workbench. There was no podium, no projector, no polished presentation prepared by a public relations team. Just Nicole, in navy coveralls with grease on one sleeve. She wiped her palms against her pants. "My name is Nicole Harris. I served 6 years in the Army." Her voice was quiet at first. "When I got out, everybody kept thanking me for my service." She paused. "That sounds nice. But nobody knew what to do with me after that?" The lead evaluator lowered her pen. Nicole continued. "In the Army, I was trusted with vehicles worth more than I'll probably earn in 10 years. Then I came home and applied for entry-level jobs, where people asked whether I knew how to use basic tools." Robert looked down. "I started thinking maybe the things I knew didn't count here." She glanced toward Hannah. "When I came to Liberty Garage, I almost quit twice. Why, an evaluator asked. Transportation, money. And because I kept assuming everybody else knew more than me." Hannah smiled faintly. Nicole saw it. "Someone here taught me to check my work without doubting my worth." Hannah looked away, suddenly interested in a wrench on the bench. Nicole continued. "I have a final interview with a fleet maintenance company Monday. One evaluator asked, 'What did this program give you?' Nicole thought before answering. 'Not confidence. That surprised everyone. It gave me evidence. Confidence came after." Walter closed his eyes briefly. Daniel had once asked for somewhere he could still be useful. Now Walter was hearing the same need in different words. The evaluator spent the next 2 hours speaking with students, staff, and customers. Mr. Howard from Riverside Motor Lodge brought maintenance records showing reduced downtime since Liberty Garage began servicing his laundry equipment. A representative from Northside Family Shelter described the night the team stayed until morning, even after proving the electrical failure was not their fault. Robert spoke last among the instructors. "How has the program changed?" an evaluator asked. Robert crossed his arms. "We stopped treating students like they should be grateful just to be here." Michael looked at him surprised. Robert continued. "We started asking what keeps them from succeeding." He nodded toward Hannah. "Sometimes an outsider sees the thing people inside stopped noticing." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "Outsider. You've been here a month, still rude, still true." Even the evaluators laughed. Then came the numbers. Michael laid everything out honestly. Attendance had risen. 4 students had secured jobs. 3 businesses had signed recurring service agreements. Revenue from repair work was growing. But the garage was not profitable. Not yet. The lead evaluator looked at Walter. "Mr. Bennett, are you prepared to guarantee operating losses?" The room became quiet. A month earlier, Walter would have answered before she finished asking. Now he looked toward Hannah. She did not nod. She did not shake her head. The choice had to be his. "No," Walter said. Michael glanced at him. The evaluator looked surprised. "You're not I can keep this building alive with money," Walter said. "But that would prove nothing except that I have money." He gestured toward the garage. "If this program deserves to survive, it should eventually stand without me holding it up. What will the foundation fund? The barriers." Walter pointed toward Rebecca. She distributed a proposal: transportation assistance, childcare support, certification fees, emergency tools for graduates entering employment. The evaluator read it. Walter continued. "We'll build access. We won't purchase outcomes." Hannah felt something loosen inside her. Walter had finally understood. The meeting ended shortly after noon. Then everyone waited. The evaluators disappeared into Michael's office. Nicole paced. Robert pretended to clean tools. Michael drank 3 coffees. Hannah sat beside Ethan's bridge. Walter stood near Daniel's pickup. 47 minutes later, the office door opened. The lead evaluator held a folder. "We're continuing funding for 6 months. Nobody reacted immediately. Perhaps they were afraid they had misunderstood. Michael spoke first. 6 months with performance milestones." Nicole covered her mouth. Robert exhaled. The evaluator continued. "We are also recommending renewal consideration if employment placements and earned service revenue continue to improving." Michael's face broke into a grin. Nicole hugged Hannah without warning. Hannah laughed. "We're not done. I know, 6 months isn't forever. I know." "Okay, then breathe." Across the room, Walter remained still. Rebecca approached him. "You could look happier." "I am." Then, what Walter watched Nicole celebrating with the other students. "For 21 years, I thought Daniel's legacy was the foundation." Rebecca followed his gaze. And now I think the foundation was only supposed to make room for this." Later, when the garage emptied, Walter found Hannah putting away tools. "I have something for you. If it's $17, I'm leaving." "It isn't." He opened his hand. A challenge coin rested on his palm. Unlike Daniel's worn bronze coin, this one was newer. The same bridge crossed its center. The same words surrounded it. "Leave no one behind." Hannah reached into her pocket and removed Daniel's coin. "You already gave me one." Walter looked at it. That one was Daniel's. He held out the new coin. "This one is yours." Didn't take it. "What did I do to earn a medal? It's not a medal." Then what is it? Walter thought about the answer. A reminder of what that helping someone doesn't mean carrying them forever. Hannah looked at the bridge. Walter continued. "Sometimes you just give them enough road to reach the other side." Hannah finally accepted the coin. For a moment she held both. One worn by Daniel, one untouched. Past and future. "I want you to take his back," she said. Walter shook his head. "No. It belongs to your family." Walter looked toward the whiteboard. So does what it became. Hannah understood. She closed her hand around both coins. 3 weeks later, Nicole called Hannah at 7:06 in the morning. Hannah was making breakfast. "I got it." Hannah smiled immediately. "The fleet job full-time. Benefits? Monday through Friday." Ethan looked up from his cereal. Hannah put the phone on speaker. "What are you going to do with your first paycheck?" Nicole laughed. "Buy a car so I never take 2 buses to Liberty Garage again. Good answer." Then Nicole became quiet. "And I want to come back Saturdays." "For what?" "To help the new students." Hannah leaned against the counter. "You know they're not paying much." "I know." Then why? Nicole answered simply. "Because somebody stayed for me." Hannah looked toward the challenge coin beside her keys. There it was. The part Walter's money could never buy. The kindness was moving on by itself. Months passed. Hannah completed the first stage of her renewed certification. Her hospital salary made life steadier, not luxurious, steadier. The electric bill stopped frightening her. The refrigerator stayed fuller. Ethan went on his field trip, and when Hannah finally had enough saved to consider replacing the Malibu, she paid to repair it instead. "Why keep that old thing?" Robert asked. "Because it still runs. Barely. So do you." Robert stared at her. Nicole nearly dropped a wrench laughing. One cold evening, Hannah and Ethan drove home from Liberty Garage. They stopped at the same gas station where Hannah had once spent her final $6 on coffee and a sandwich. The sign still flickered. The same fluorescent lights buzzed above the pumps. As Hannah finished filling the Malibu, Ethan pointed toward the edge of the parking lot. "Mom." A compact car sat with its hood raised. Beside it stood a young woman wearing CNA scrubs. In the back seat, a little girl was wrapped in a pink coat. The woman held a phone in one hand. Her face carried an expression Hannah recognized immediately. Fear disguised as calculation. Hannah watched her count several crumpled bills. $14. The woman looked toward the road, then toward her daughter. Ethan looked at Hannah. Neither spoke. Then Ethan smiled. "We're building another one, aren't we?" Hannah slowly closed the gas cap. Across the parking lot, the stranded mother lowered her head, unaware that someone had finally noticed her. Hannah reached into her coat. Her fingers touched the challenge coin. Then she started walking toward the broken car. The woman looked up when Hannah approached. "I'm okay," she said immediately. Hannah almost smiled. Walter had said nearly the same thing. The woman stood beside a silver compact sedan that looked only slightly younger than Hannah's Malibu. She wore dark blue CNA scrubs beneath a thin jacket. Her hair was pulled back hastily, and exhaustion showed beneath her eyes. In the back seat, a little girl slept beneath a pink coat. "You sure?" Hannah asked. The woman looked at the open hood. "No. What happened?" It started shaking. Then the temperature light came on. I pulled over. "Good." Hannah leaned toward the engine but did not touch anything. "Did you keep driving after the warning? Maybe 30 seconds? "That was smart." The woman laughed nervously. "Doesn't feel smart?" Her name was Jasmine Carter. She worked evenings at an assisted living facility 6 miles away. Her daughter Mia was 7. Jasmine had called a towing company. "They want $85 just to come out." Hannah glanced at the bills in her hand. Jasmine noticed. "I have $14 until Thursday." The sentence traveled backward through time. $17? Gas? Breakfast? Emergency? Hannah remembered standing inside this same station opening an almost empty wallet. Ethan came over. "Can we help?" Jasmine looked embarrassed. "I don't want charity." Hannah smiled. "I know that sentence too." She turned on her phone flashlight and examined the engine. The coolant reservoir was nearly empty. There was residue along a hose connection. "Looks like you've got a coolant leak. Is that expensive? Depends where it's coming from." Hannah checked carefully. The clamp had failed near a deteriorated hose end. She could make it safe enough to move only if the engine had not overheated badly. But Hannah did not want to gamble with Jasmine's car. She called Liberty Garage. Nicole answered. "Please tell me you're not calling with another emergency washer. Stranded mom, coolant leak," where Hannah gave the address. "I'm 20 minutes away. You don't have to come." Nicole laughed. "You really said that?" Hannah looked toward Ethan. He was smiling. "Fine. Bring the service van." 23 minutes later, Nicole pulled into the station with a new Liberty Garage trainee named Keisha beside her. They pressure tested the system, confirmed the leak, and made a safe temporary repair. Jasmine watched closely. "How much is this going to cost?" Nicole looked at Hannah. Hannah looked at Jasmine. "You can cover the replacement hose Thursday." "Then Thursday?" Jasmine shook her head. "I don't want anyone paying for me. No one is." Hannah pointed toward Keisha. "She needs supervised field hours. You need a repair. Liberty Garage has an emergency assistance fund for exactly this kind of situation." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "What's the catch?" "No catch. There's always a catch." Hannah understood that too. The goal isn't to make you owe us. The goal is to keep one bad night from becoming 3 bad months. Jasmine looked toward her sleeping daughter. Hannah continued. "If you lose the car, maybe you miss work. If you miss work, maybe you lose hours. Then rent becomes a problem. Sometimes the cheapest thing a community can do is stop the first domino." Jasmine's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. "Thank you. Thank Nicole." She left dinner. Nicole looked offended. "It was microwave lasagna. Still dinner." Keisha finished tightening the temporary connection. The car started normally. Jasmine exhaled. Before leaving, she reached into her pocket. "I can give you the 14? Hannah shook her head. "Keep it. But buy your daughter breakfast." The words came naturally. Then Hannah realized how closely the moment mirrored her night with Walter. Only something was different. Walter's help had eventually opened a door for Hannah. Now Hannah had skills, contacts, a stable paycheck. She could offer more than $17. She could offer a system. Jasmine drove away carefully. Ethan stood beside Hannah. "You didn't give her your coin." "No." "Why?" "Because it isn't a reward for needing help." He thought about that. "Then who gets one?" Hannah smiled. "Someone who helps build the next bridge." Over the following months, Liberty Garage continued changing. Nicole started her full-time fleet maintenance job and returned most Saturdays. Keisha completed her training. 2 more students found employment. Michael negotiated additional service contracts with small businesses. Robert developed a structured mentoring program, though he complained constantly that paperwork was how civilization ends. Hannah completed her certification. The day the envelope arrived, she sat at the kitchen table for nearly a minute before opening it. Ethan hovered beside her. "Well, I'm trying to enjoy the moment. You're making it stressful." Hannah laughed and tore the envelope. There it was. Her certification, her name, Hannah White. She ran one finger across the printed letters. 5 years earlier, she had packed away her textbooks because survival demanded it. Now she had finished. Ethan wrapped his arms around her. "You built it." "What, the bridge?" Hannah held him tightly. "We built it." Life did not become perfect. The Malibu still made suspicious noises. Rent increased. Ethan needed braces. Hannah occasionally worked overtime. There were mornings when she was tired, and evenings when dinner came from a frozen box. But the difference was enormous. Before, one unexpected bill could destroy the month. Now Hannah had savings. Not much. Enough. And enough finally meant something different. One Wednesday afternoon, she arrived at Liberty Garage and stopped in the doorway. The place was full. Every workbench was occupied. Nicole was teaching 2 students how to test a charging system. Robert was arguing with a supplier on the phone. Michael was showing a motel manager the service schedule. Near the whiteboard, a woman Hannah had never seen before sat filling out an application, while a toddler colored beside her. Ethan's original bridge remained above them. Someone had covered it with a clear protective sheet so it could not be erased. Walter stood beside it. He visited less often now. That Hannah realized was a sign of success. "You disappeared," she said. "I'm practicing. Practicing what not being needed." Hannah smiled. "That must be difficult for you." "Extremely." Walter looked around. "We're holding a graduation ceremony next month. For how many? 12? Hannah's face brightened. Walter continued. Nicole suggested something. He handed Hannah a small box. Inside were several simple bronze-colored challenge coins. Each showed a bridge. Around the edge were the familiar words, "Leave no one behind." Hannah lifted one. "These aren't the foundation coins." "No. The students designed them." Walter nodded. They want each graduating class to give one to somebody who helped them keep going." Hannah turned the coin over. On the back was a blank space. For a name, she asked, or a date, or nothing. Hannah looked toward the woman completing the application. Her toddler had dropped a crayon. Nicole walked past, picked it up, and returned it to the child without interrupting her conversation. A tiny act. Almost invisible. Hannah thought of $17. A sandwich divided beneath fluorescent lights. A broken pickup. 3 black SUVs. None of those things had been the real miracle. The real miracle was that the kindness had refused to stop with the person who received it. Walter looked at Hannah. "You coming to graduation wouldn't miss it. Good." He glanced toward Ethan's drawing. 1 year next week. Hannah knew exactly what he meant. 1 year since the roadside. 1 year since she had spent everything in her wallet on a stranger. She looked at the bridge, then at the box of coins. "Walter? Yes, I have an idea for the emergency fund." He smiled cautiously. "Does this idea involve you telling me how to spend money again?" "Probably. I was afraid of that." Hannah laughed, but the idea was already forming, and when graduation day arrived, she planned to bring something with her. Not thousands of dollars. Not a giant donation. Exactly 17. 1 year after Hannah White stopped beside Walter Bennett's broken pickup Liberty Garage, held a graduation ceremony. There was no ballroom, no stage, no expensive decorations. Robert had swept the service floor twice and complained both times that someone immediately walked across it with dirty boots. 12 folding chairs stood in uneven rows between the workbenches. A table near the office held coffee grocery store cupcakes, lemonade, and a tray of sandwiches. Children moved between adults while parents repeatedly told them not to touch the tools. Above everything remained Ethan's crooked bridge. The original marker drawing had faded slightly, so Michael had covered it with a clear acrylic sheet. Underneath Ethan's uneven handwriting still read, "We'll build a bridge." Hannah stood beneath it wearing her St. Catherine Equipment Support uniform. Her certification badge was clipped beside her hospital ID. She had come directly from work. A year earlier, the same hospital had employed her downstairs in the laundry department. Now she maintained equipment throughout the building. She was not wealthy. Her Malibu was still parked outside. The duplex was still home. There were still bills on her kitchen table. But there was money in savings. There was food in the refrigerator. There was choice. For Hannah, that was wealth enough. Mom Ethan ran toward her. He was carrying a cardboard box filled with the new challenge coins. "You're supposed to put these by this door. I was coming. You've been talking for 10 minutes. That is called being an adult. It looks inefficient." Hannah laughed and took the box. Nicole arrived behind him wearing her fleet maintenance uniform. 6 months into her new job, she had already been promoted to senior trainee. She still returned to Liberty Garage most Saturdays. "You ready?" Hannah asked. Nicole looked toward the 12 graduates. "I think so. You're nervous. I'm giving a speech. You survived Robert for a year." "Fair point." From across the garage, Robert shouted, "I heard that. You were supposed to," Nicole called back. Walter arrived quietly. No black SUVs, no entourage. He drove Daniel's old Ford pickup. The truck had finally been properly restored, though Walter had insisted the scratches remain. Hannah noticed him standing near the back row. "You're not sitting up front, no? You founded this place. That's why I've sat up front long enough." Hannah smiled. The ceremony began at 11. Michael spoke briefly. Rebecca announced that Liberty Garage had secured enough service contracts to cover a significant portion of its operating costs for the coming year. The funding partner had renewed support. More importantly, employers were now contacting Liberty Garage, asking about graduates. Then Nicole stepped forward. She looked at the students. "A year ago, I thought being helped meant somebody had decided I couldn't handle my own life." The room became quiet. "But the best people here never carried me." Nicole looked toward Hannah. "They gave me somewhere to stand while I learned to carry myself." Hannah lowered her eyes. Nicole continued, "That's what this place should be." One by one, the graduates received certificates. Then came the challenge coins. Each graduate received one. Not to keep automatically, Michael explained the tradition. This coin is meant to be passed to someone who helped you cross a difficult stretch, or to someone you see helping another person cross theirs. Walter watched from the back. His eyes moved toward the worn coin Hannah still carried. Daniel's coin. After the ceremony, people ate sandwiches and took photographs. A newly graduated student named Marcus showed his certificate to his daughter. Keisha helped a new trainee complete enrollment paperwork. Nicole crawled beneath a car because she had heard an unfamiliar sound while someone drove into the garage. Robert complained that nobody respected graduation as a day off. The garage was alive. Walter approached Hannah. Daniel would have liked this. You think he would have hated the speeches? Hannah laughed. And the cupcakes. He hated frosting. Then definitely don't tell him Ethan ate 3. Walter smiled, but his eyes remained on the room. For years I thought I was keeping Daniel's memory alive by funding places like this. And now I think memories aren't supposed to be kept alive. Hannah looked at him. They're supposed to keep something else alive. Walter nodded. Exactly. Ethan appeared carrying an empty envelope. Mom, where does this go? Hannah took it. Come with me. Near the entrance stood a small metal box. Emergency Support Fund. The fund now paid for bus passes, emergency childcare basic tools, and small crises that might otherwise force trainees to quit. Hannah opened her wallet. She removed a $10 bill, then a 5, then 2 ones. $17. Walter noticed. For a moment, nobody spoke. Hannah placed the money inside the envelope. On the front, she wrote, "For the next person stranded." Walter read it. "You planned this for a while. Why 17? Ethan answered before she could. "Because that's what Mom had." Walter looked at Hannah. She nodded. "Everything I had that night." Walter's expression softened. "And you'd do it again?" Hannah considered the question carefully. "I'd stop again." That was not quite the same answer. She continued, "But now I know kindness isn't about emptying yourself every time someone needs help." Walter listened. "Sometimes you give money, sometimes you give time, sometimes you give knowledge, sometimes you just make sure somebody isn't standing alone long enough for one bad night to ruin everything." She dropped the envelope into the box. Ethan watched it disappear. Then the front door opened. A woman Hannah did not recognize stepped inside. She appeared to be in her early 30s, wearing a supermarket uniform beneath a winter coat. A little boy stood beside her. The woman held a folder against her chest. "Excuse me?" Michael started toward her. Hannah was closer. "Can I help you?" The woman hesitated. "I heard you have evening training." "We do. I work days. That's why we have evenings. I don't know anything about engines." "You don't have to." The woman looked around at the equipment. "I'm probably too old to start over." Hannah smiled. "How old are you, 34? Robert called from across the garage. Hannah started older than that. Hannah turned. "Robert." "What?" The woman laughed nervously. Some tension left her shoulders. "My car also needs work," she admitted. "I almost didn't make it here." Hannah looked toward Walter. He understood immediately. A stranded person, again. But this time nobody needed 3 black SUVs. Nobody needed a miracle. They had a garage, tools, teachers, a childcare support program, transportation assistance, people who knew how expensive it was to be poor. Hannah pulled out a chair. "Sit down." The woman hesitated. "I can't afford much. We didn't ask what you could afford." Hannah opened the enrollment folder. "We're going to figure out what you need to start." The woman sat. Her son wandered toward Ethan's bridge. Who drew that Ethan raised his hand proudly? "I did." "What does it mean?" Ethan looked at Hannah. A year earlier, whenever he asked whether they were okay, Hannah had answered with the same promise. "We'll build a bridge." Back then, the bridge meant surviving until payday. Now it meant something larger. Hannah looked at the new woman sitting across from her. "It means nobody gets carried forever," she said. "But nobody should have to cross the hardest part alone." Walter lowered his head, smiling. Outside, Daniel's restored pickup sat beneath the winter sunlight. Inside, another person had just been noticed, and the bridge grew 1 plank longer. The greatest kindness in Hannah White's story was never $17. $17 could buy gasoline, coffee, a sandwich, and 1 difficult night of safety. It could not build a career. It could not repair grief. It could not guarantee a future. What changed Hannah's life was that 2 people eventually learned how to truly see each other. Hannah saw Walter when everyone else kept driving. Walter later saw ability in Hannah that years of survival had taught her to ignore. But he did not hand her a perfect life. Hannah still had to show up, fail, learn, negotiate, work, exhausted, finish her certification, and choose what kind of future she wanted. Walter had something to learn, too. For years, he believed helping meant providing enough money to remove a problem. Hannah reminded him that people need more than rescue. They need dignity, usefulness, access, and the chance to stand on their own feet. Leave no one behind did not mean carrying everyone forever. Sometimes it meant staying beside someone until they could take the next step themselves. And sometimes the smallest bridge begins with what seems painfully insignificant, even $17. If someone once helped you at exactly the moment you needed it, share that story in the comments. You never know who may need to read it today. And if this story meant something to you, share it with someone you care about and subscribe for more stories about dignity, kindness, and the quiet choices that can change a life.